we're going to open it up without further ado. Questions and comments from the audience. Please raise your hand and a runner will bring a microphone to you. We will take questions in the order that they are received. Please wait until the microphone reaches you so that everybody can hear. Just thanks again to Phyllis, Chief Judy Wilson, and Carly. I wanted to ask how to pronounce your name.
Brišind.
Brišind?
Yeah.
Okay. Lovely to meet you and to see your film. On behalf of KDocs, you know, just the knowledge and the wisdom and I think the work, like we all watched the credits at the end of the films to see all of the people that are behind, you know, making, I'm a filmmaker myself, so I understand all the work it takes from, you know, conception to those long days of being followed around with a camera and being interviewed and all the editing and all the wonderful people that put work into it. So first of all, congratulations on the success of these films coming to light. And just perhaps going to the audience, if we wanted to start there, if there's anybody that wanted to start us off with a question. Let's give you a moment to percolate on that.
This is for anyone really on the panel, although it does pertain specifically to the doctrine of recovery, and I was wondering if you could comment on the current status of the request of Buckingham Palace and so-called King Charles. Is there anything further to there in hopes of having the film screened?
Secwépemc request could be Judy Wilson, Secwépemc. My traditional name is, as Janice mentioned, Red Hummingbird Roman, given to me by my mother, and from Secwépemc. Secwépemc means from Neskonlith in the Secwépemc Ulu, the same film that Phyllis showed, or is actually my mother's territory, where she fished and hunted and everything. What you viewed in both of the films is about the doctrine of discovery, really, how the colonialism through the papal bulls came to our country and was an agenda of genocide and erasure of our people, whether it was displacement off reserves or removing the children to the residential school and all the genocidal acts that happened there. The reason we want to bring it before the King Charles III is National Chief Roseanne Archibald started a process about a year ago, and even before that, the AFN did a document called Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery, and National Chief approached King Charles before he became king about an apology to the residential school survivors, but also going behind that, the doctrine of discovery repudiation. So National Chief, it was in the press, and then from that, we also talked to her about having the film premiere in London, but basically for premiere to King Charles exclusively, and that's being, letters have gone back and forth, and we'll be able to follow up. National Chief's been following up with that. And I think it's really important because it's really key and central, especially with the 215, and then all of the truth that's coming out that's actually just pouring out. Now it's like a plug's been lifted and all this stuff is coming out now, and you can see where it's coming from and has been stemmed from. So I think it's really important that that happen. It would be great if both of our films could be joined together in that endeavor. It's a nice fitting. I didn't talk to Brišind about it, so it's... yeah. So anyway, it would be nice because it's kind of a fitting, it's interesting, Janice, how you did the grouping in this documentary film panel, because there is strong ties to it, definitely. in the doctrine of recovery. So yeah, so it's in the works, and we're following up with National Chief. I know we have the special rapporteur from the United Nations coming out in March as well. So there's a lot that's unfolding, and the film tells a beautiful story about that.
Thank you. I'm not sure where my mic.
The audience microphone is conked out there. Is it on?
It is on. That's okay. I just had a bit of a...
It's on now. You're good.
Oh, we're good now. And thank you very much. I'm glad that you appreciate the pairing. I do for my own reasons, and so I hope others do as well. And this is maybe just a little bit of a follow-up question that I should have attached for anyone. When I teach these subjects in my classes and through reading and writing and other types of assignments and projects and presentations, one question that often comes up from students and myself as well is on the issue of, Buckingham Palace.
Recording in progress.
It sounds like our Zoomer might be coming soon. On the issue of Buckingham Palace and King Charles and the apology and, moving from a kind of manifest destiny to a doctrine of recovery. I wonder if anyone on the panel can comment on an approach or an interpretation of the balance between seeking out such an apology and why that is necessary and the work that that might do with, does that retroactively legitimize those colonial structures, those monarchies, those royalist structures, or can both ideas coexist? That we have thoughts about both. I'm just wondering if anyone on the panel can comment on that.
Well,
They all have microphones now, so I think we've got some answers coming.
Yeah.
It probably will just turn on. Give it a try.
Give it a...
Oh, darn.
no.
Okay. There's another one right there.
All right.
There we go.
Well, that question kind of took a journey. So does it matter? Do apologies matter? I think,
no, the apology matters.
Does the apology legitimize the colonial structure? I mean, I think if you're seeking an apology, you're wanting an acknowledgement for the wrong that was done. Mm-hmm. And if there's an acknowledgement for the wrong that was done, then it opens up the potential for a discussion on what exactly was done and what needs to be done. Because the reality is, unless somebody knows something that I don't, which is perfectly possible, today is February the 24th of 2023, and we ain't going back to February the 23rd of 2023, and we ain't going back to 2022, and we ain't going back to 1872, and we ain't going back to 1492. And so that is what I was speaking to her earlier, that when you talk about unity and you talk about recognizing people's common humanity and coming together. I'm kind of getting old and ornery now. So it's a little tiresome to me when, we are required at this moment to move in the same direction. But every single time there are efforts at cooperation, there is resistance to that because there are various cliques. Well, this group can't talk to this group, and this group can't talk to this group. And if you talk to this person, then you can't talk to me because I don't like that, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. And oh, well, this person is, a black person, and this person's an Asian person, and on and on and on and on. And it's like, how about we get to that place where we recognize that we are aspiring human beings? How about we try to get there, and then we can have a discussion? Because what I believe is one of the biggest fallacies is when they say, there's 7 billion human beings on Earth. There might be 7 billion humans, but there ain't 7 billion human beings. Because it's the being part of human that is being detached. And I think that we need to look at how it is that we are going to come together and we are going to move forward. Because I tell you what, when that moment comes and the lights go out, y'all are going to look the same color. And there's no ethnicity going to save you. It's going to be whether or not you can relate to the earth, and you can relate to your neighbor, and you can relate to your relative. So neighbors have to become relatives. Strangers have to become friends. We have to have this ability and recognize it. And tribes worldwide, what is it the fundamental basis of a tribe? It's family. It's an extended family. And that is how tribal societies came about, how clans emerged, and then how tribes emerged, was that sense of family and that sense of responsibility. So, if we're all the tribe here, we all have responsibilities to one another, and we all know what those responsibilities are. And that's why the society functions in any tribe. But then you start to dismantle those structures, i.e. with something such as we explored in the Doctrine of Recovery, then you see what the consequence of that is. But it is undeniable what is happening to the earth. It is undeniable where we are at this moment. That's why it kind of amazes me that people are more concerned who the masked singer is than what's happening with climate change. Because unless we can embrace the big things, when it happens, we're going to be floundering because we are totally unprepared. And so I think that that's where the idea of the necessity of apologies comes in. Because it's not, lip service is a waste of time. Okay, I'm not going to say that. So far as the king, right? The king makes an apology. And people will be like, oh, well, yeah, that was really nice, but what's going to happen next? Mm-hmm. Well, it's then holding them accountable. You make the apology is public. Everybody sees it. So that's like, what are you going to do about it? So you acknowledge everything that's happened. It opens up that discussion. What really happened? Not what you said happened, not what you present in a book or whatever, but what actually happened. And you open up that dialogue. And then you try and find a way forward from there. But it has to be a way forward that's inclusive of everybody. Everybody. Because we are all in this together. And until we realize that, we are putting ourselves at a serious disadvantage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the panel want to respond?
Just my responses are usually stories. That's how when I hear a question, it's like, oh, I know a story about that.
True elder fashion.
I was asked by CTV National, this was before the Queen passed away, whether I was asked for an interview, and the question was whether I thought the Queen should apologize. And it was in my many emails, rushing out on a Friday or whatever, and I was supposed to get back by a certain day, and I guess in true elder fashion, I needed to think about it. And as I'm just so busy doing, as you've seen, that I rarely get time to sit down and, talk about the Queen or other people. And so I've always, like, my experience was at residential school was a walk in the park compared to Granny and my mom, my aunts, and my uncles, so I always defer to them. And I asked my aunt, Agnes, the one that raised me, and I told her, I've been asked this question and I don't really know what to say. And so she responded with the story and said that at the St. Joseph Mission, that every morning the nun would get them to stand up. They would turn to the back of the classroom where a big mug of the Queen was, and they would have to, I don't know what they would say, but they would pay homage to the Queen every morning. And then they would turn around, and then they would I think it was like God Save the Queen or something like that, yeah. And then they would be made to sing O Canada, like turn around and sing O Canada. So my aunt was saying, yeah, she needs to apologize. And she would have known about the children being buried. Reports would have been sent to their office on what was going on. They knew what was going on and let it go on. And so, like you said, it would make them accountable. It would be out there. So if CTV National ever calls on me again about the now, what is he, King? Yeah, King Charles, and I'll be able to have some kind of a response anyway. So that's my story.
Thank you. Thank you both for responding to Janice's question. The floor is open to anybody else who might have questions for the filmmakers, the participants in the film. But in the meantime, while people might just be thinking or sort of letting all of this percolate, my question for you, Phyllis, is first of all, just hearing the story and in the film and everything was really emotional. So I'm glad they had the trigger warning, because I was just like, okay, like I was just ready, you know. And typically you don't always get that. You don't always get that chance to prepare yourself. So I knew that we were going to be hearing stories. Like I've heard these stories from my own grandmother, my mother too, but it's hard every time. But I just get curious because you're the one, you know, it initiates this Orange Shirt Day. Do you know how many orange shirts you own? I know I have lots, but not compared to, I'm wondering how many different shirts you might own now.
I have no idea. We just moved and we have a downstairs now, so I put it in one of the closets downstairs, and it was buckling. Oh. So, but I do cull it every now and again, and I give it to like schools or at the Orange Shirt event. I just put it on a table and people can help themselves, and so a lot.
A lot. You could be wearing orange every day if you wanted, yeah, different, yes, yeah. A different shirt.
I never have to worry about what to wear.
Perfect.
I think that's a great thing. That's what geniuses do, right? They just wear the same thing every day, simplify their lives. Good for the environment. So yeah, and also too, just I guess following up to that too for the doctrine of recovery. I don't want to get it wrong. I read it. I'm a little bit dyslexic, and so I was getting it backwards. For that film, who shot the film for you? It was really beautifully done. And do you know what kind of camera they used? Technically, I just have to know. I already looked up who shot yours.
Yeah, I use the same cinematographer and director of photography. We've worked on 3 or 4 projects now. And my daughter shot some of it too. And so in terms of, what do we use what we have available at the time. We're going to be undertaking a pretty significant project this summer, and we're actually going through the process now of deciding what it is that we're going to use, because it's a totally different, it's not a run and gun kind of a project. But I think you can't get too bogged down in the technicality. And, you know, you can teach all of that, but what you can't teach is an eye. That is what you cannot teach. So you can go to university and learn every single technical aspect. You can study up on what all the latest technology is. But if you don't have the heart-eye connection and the eye-heart connection, then it's kind of irrelevant, I think, because between the heart and the eye and the eye and the heart is where the magic is. Yeah. And that enables you to see it. And if you can see it, then you're able to bring it to other people. You know, I used to be a photographer, and I would get interviewed until they stopped interviewing me because I never answered the question the way they wanted me to answer it. And generally it would be, where do you take your pictures? And I would say, I don't take pictures. And so right there you'd get that kind of slight intake of breath. I said, I make images. You know, I don't take pictures. Because I used to shoot, you know, a lot of grizzly bears and wolves and so on and so forth. And I would say, you know, it's a compact between me and them. That if they want their image to be made for a purpose, which, you know, I always aspired to be able to make an image that translated that these beings had spirit and soul. And that if that alchemy occurred, then you'd create an image. And then the next thing they would ask me is, okay, well, where do you make all your images then? You know, they get the idea that I wasn't going to go with the take. And I would say, in my dreams. And then they just thought I was totally out there, which, you know, is fair enough, because I am kind of out there. But I can honestly share with you that every significant photograph that I have had the privilege of creating, I have seen it ahead of time. I have seen it before. You know, I got one of an elk that's bugling, and it's just like this portrait. And I dreamt it. I saw it ahead of time. And then I went out and it happened. And I think that this is, you know, this is a part of the creative process. That if we allow ourselves, you know, if we allow ourselves to feel, it's like everybody. If we allow ourselves to feel, then it is going, that feeling is going to show. And that feeling is not just inspiration, but, you know, there's a process to it. There's a ritual to it. You know, there is a fashion of touching the sacred within it, because, like, for everybody here, you know, if you were moved by the films today, or whether they're not our films, but, you know, somebody else's film, you know, you were part of that. You were part of that process because it moved you in some way or another. Even if it's only that, you know, when you're going back to your vehicle or you go home tonight, whatever, you know, you think about it. There's something about it that makes you think. Because we've also, I think, as a modern society, we've lost our ability to think. Because we're told so many things that we have to do, and we're told how it is we're supposed to be, and what it is that we're supposed to conform to, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do the other. So, you know, it kind of stifles our thought. You know, and I used to say the most dangerous person in the United States is a person that thinks. Because that kind of makes you a subversive, because you're not just following along, you know. And like today, it's like you're not following one side on cable news, or you're not following the other side. You know, you're trying to think about it yourself. And I think that that's another really significant aspect of creativity and what artists can bring to inspire that connectivity.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. It was a lot more than I thought I was going to get, but I really felt connected to what you were saying nonetheless. It was like bringing it all in. For you, I really wanted to hear, you brought up something great, which I think maybe people could be wondering about, is what's next for people? Like, what are your next big things that you're looking at, maybe projects or anything that you want to share? Because it's exciting. You didn't tell us quite what you were working at. Maybe that was on purpose. But if you can share maybe what's next for you, that would be wonderful.
I'm going to deflect over, because my main question is actually for Phyllis, about, you mentioned near the end of the film starting to think about commemoration for the children and for the babies. And I was wondering if you felt able to share an update about any commemoration that's planned or is underway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the truth is not yet fully told. That's what I usually say when I present. And what I mean by that is that there were children, in addition to the ones that we're hearing about now, that aren't in mainstream media yet, the ones that were incinerated. And so they were children that were conceived by, like, the clergy with the girls and maybe the older boys and the girls, and were killed and incinerated. And so this year is the 10th year of Orange Shirt Day, and I was wanting to have at the St. Joseph Mission a monument for the babies and to have some healing around that. Because our chief, who is my cousin, his grandfather and my grandmother are brother and sister, his mother was responsible for incinerating babies, along with 2 other girls from our community. But with the recent announcement, or last year, of the 92, I believe, Chief Willie Sellers announced the findings. So the ground that I was on in the documentary, there were bodies underneath. And that bone was a deer bone. We got it sampled. And it was a gopher that brought, like, there's gopher holes everywhere. And then recently, there are, Chief Sellers announced January 25th, an additional 66 anomalies that are, like, possibly bodies as well. And they're not even done. They just started. So the site at St. Joseph Mission is under 24/7 security at this point. And we're having our planning meeting on this coming Thursday, but so I'm not too sure about the monument, if it's going to happen or not. A whole lot of work and healing and collaboration will need to go into something like that, because there are women alive today that this happened to, that can tell that story. And it's, yeah, so I think it's kind of too late now maybe to do something, but maybe in the future, definitely, because that building, it was shown in there, is still there, and DNA was taken from that incinerator as well. So so I'm not sure. We'll find out if the communities are willing to go there, because what I envision it is that we'll have community healing and community discussions about this. And then when the monument, when we have the ceremony for the monument, we're leaving it there, that it's not ours to carry anymore. And because it does affect families stories. And, you know, my cousin, he carried that story for a long time, and he told me, and the day after 215, the Friday, because 215, Chief Casimir talked about it on a Thursday, the Friday we got together, all of our, in Williams Lake, and the chiefs were talking, and when he got up and he said, "My mother," I knew what he was going to say, so I went and stood beside him. And he said he was going to chicken out telling the story, but he seen me there, so he continued and told his story. But yeah, so there's a lot, you know, to process, and it'll happen, if not this year in September, but maybe in years to come, because it is a crime scene, and no way that thousands of people could go trumpsing around there like maybe we could have a year or so ago. But yeah, so to be continued, to be determined. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about upcoming either endeavors or projects of your community? Or
Just a bit of the status quo, what's going on currently in Canada. I know the special interlocutor, Kimberly Murray, has her hearings going on nationally. So she was in Vancouver a few weeks ago for the data sovereignty around unmarked burial graves and sites. So a lot of the truth is still coming out. So she had an interim report. She had a very narrow time frame to gather the evidence, but she's running up against a lot of roadblocks on that. So the truth is trying to come out, but there's so many barriers even to the access of records and the actual investigations. Many of the nations are still, you know, doing the ground penetrating radar stuff. So a lot's still coming forward. But while a physical monument might not be able to be physically done, I'm hoping there's still a 10-year anniversary gathering, some sort like that, and that the Kimberly Murray reports, the special interlocutor, you know, will have that information, and then when the United Nations Special Rapporteur comes to the country and does his country visit, that his reports would be made available, because he's meeting with many nations across Canada. And then when we're going out to London to King Charles III with Doctrine and Recovery, you know, there still needs to be that information that goes out there, and because there's so many layers and levels of truth coming out. And I think that's what we're sharing here is part of that truth. But there's still much more to uncover yet, how far the genocide really went, and you know, the origins of it are talked about in the Doctrine of Recovery. You know, that it was actually brought here to, you know, of erasure, to get rid of us off the land, and to use the land how they wanted to take the wealth from the land, to dispossess us of the land. That's why land rights, land back, is so important. Mm-hmm. And then also the healing that Phyllis is talking about, so important. Because you think about how is our knowledge and transfer to our younger generation going to happen when a lot of the language was forbidden in the schools. My father, Grand Chief Joe Manuel, was a student at the Kamloops, so he basically had the language beaten out of him. You know, we went in at age 5, just basically taken away, and then wasn't out till age 16. And he directly heard all those stories, and he actually did his statement to this special interlocutor a few weeks ago in Vancouver here, and also to the Union BC Indian Chiefs in last October to our AGA. He did a statement there as well. So, and I know Regional Chief Gerald Antoine, Dene National Chief, he's working on the National Indian Residential School Survivors Gathering, so the survivors have their direct voice, because that's one of the things we're hearing directly. Even my father says that they don't feel part of the process, they don't feel involved, their voices aren't being heard, all of those things, because everything's layered and there's investigations and everything. So I'm hoping all of that comes together. There's just so many pieces to it. And I'm just, you know, applauding Phyllis for all the educational awareness she does internationally and nationally in all the schools. I've seen in the Whirlwind Tour how many, you know, school visits, college, university, everywhere, right? The high schools and elementary schools, and I think that's where that learning has to happen. So, and Doctrine Recovery is doing the same. They're, you know, going to be going out to many places as well. So the more we have the truth out there, and one question I get asked is, people are like, they're like deer in a headlight. They feel guilty, and they feel like, you know, what can we do?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is exactly what Brišind and Phyllis are doing, going out and educating everybody, so you can have the dialogues. You got to move. I think you have to acknowledge what Brišind was saying about the acknowledge it. But the other part is, what can you do as an individual about it? We don't want people to be paralyzed in trauma like how we were. Mm-hmm. We want our people to heal and move forward, but you also need to acknowledge the genocide, and what are you going to do? How are you going to talk to your children about it? Mm-hmm. How are you going to have that dialogue on what you can do? Because on Orange Shirt Day, I usually get 2 or 3 places I need to go to, and I think I ended up in White Rock last year. And the audience was like that. They were afraid to ask any questions, and they were like, what do we do? And I said that, you know, and that one guy, oh, thank you for saying that, because he said, I've been feeling guilty for years and I didn't know what to do. I got really sad what our people did to your people, and even if it wasn't me directly, it was, you know, our governments and, you know, he was angry about it. And so I explained a lot of things he could do. There's so much that you could do. Yeah. You know, that as Brišind said, we have to work together at this. It's not, you can't let us be in our own trauma, otherwise the genocide continues.
Right.
Oh, that was powerful the way you ended that. Big statements there about trauma. And I think, you know, I've seen that generationally in the film too, how you talked about your son and then seeing your grandchildren on the land. And you're actively, we're witnessing, as witnesses here today, the trauma is moving. It's moving through our people finally. But yeah, in terms of what can community do, being here, watching the films, you know, being active on Orange Shirt Day, if you're a teacher, sharing with your community, going back, and we always say in our longhouses, when you're a witness, your responsibility is to go back to your community and your family and share what you've seen and heard. That's the whole, you know, that's the whole idea of having witnesses, and I believe these films are a real testament to that, you know, to that act of sharing knowledge and having people witness them and take that information with them wherever they go, right? Do we have anybody that's been waiting? Oh, okay, great. Talking away up here.
I think it's questions to Chief Judy. I think you mentioned something about the Doctrine of Discovery, and there might be an educational program that's going to do like what Phyllis is doing.
All right, thank you for that. Yeah, I talked to him about this first now. Okay. Well, we're planning on doing the premiere to King Charles III, but also talking about, it's almost like a sacred bundle, the Doctrine of Recovery, that will start over in Ottawa and make its way back this way. We're hoping to do that within a year, so that there would be the similar dialogue and presentations done and host communities across Canada so that we can dialogue further, because when you're talking about the land and how the land was taken with those agendas in mind, there's going to be a lot of the similar stories all across Canada. And I think it's very powerful in that work in itself. And there's so many messages in symbology that person put into the film, like with the horse, when the horse goes back, you know, I thought that was really cool. I thought, wow, you know, because I had 25 years in media as well, and you know, you always look for those things, how to drive the message.
Yeah, and it goes
even
left
more.
to right.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah.
The backwards of
the painting on the
colonization.
horse, and then there's the water talks, the wind talks, the land, the Mother Earth talks.
The volcano.
You had, you had everything going on in there. And if you watch it, like I think it's about maybe 4th, 5th, maybe half a dozen times I watched it now, and I'm always picking out something else in there. It's you can do that, but in a piece like that, you can talk about so many aspects of it, because so much of that has happened to our people and the lived experience of our people, and so many teaching moments in there. I won't sure if we have Georgina here. I'm positive she would have so much more to add about Doctrine of Recovery. The Casey you've seen, Tashi, it was almost like, you know, the Mother Earth, and you know, in the buffalo robe. There's so much. I know I probably could tell a lot. There's just so much in there, and the part I was a little cameoed in there was the bear healing at you know, the Rapid City when we were on Bear Butte.
Yeah, Bear Butte.
Bear Butte, so we had Chief Daryl Bob and his Lillooet bear dancers come down, and it's actually a healing dance. So, and then we did the song there and everything, and people were praying and getting healing there too. So there's so much, like Phyllis could bring in. There's so much the salmon, the symbology. Like I thought, okay, how are we going to talk about salmon in residential school? When she said that, oh my God, that was so beautifully done.
I love that too.
I love that dual narrative and how that worked together, because you know, you're basically following something, and to me it was the same. We are the water is us. We are the salmon is us. Like there's no separation between us and the elements and nature. Maybe perhaps just as a clarification or an add-on, if you want to follow the film and where it might go is probably part of it, right? For you too, because I was thinking the same thing for my own community. I want to bring films like this to my community. There's a Chilliwack Film Festival, which is completely not, you know, it's not recognizing all of the wonderful Indigenous work that's been surfacing lately. I really feel like it's a renaissance. We're in a renaissance right now of Indigenous art. And so is there a website that we can follow the film and where it goes?
Yeah, there's the doctrineofrecovery.com.
Oh, there, it's easy.
Just to kind of expound a little bit on what everybody was saying, and particularly Chief Judy. You know, the idea of starting a movie in Ottawa and then have it travel and journey from the east to the west was so that whatever community that it went into, that those communities would contribute something to a bundle that represented their experience. So by the time, you know, the film arrived over onto the West Coast, I mean, that would be so, I think, symbolically.
And are you going to film that?
It would be really significant. I'm going to let these guys film it.
Are we going to get very meta? Because now I want to see that film.
It would be so significant. And again, it's about bringing people together and people contributing, because I'm sure, you know, you feel the same way that you created this film. It's not your film. You know, it's a film that's for everybody and people in all the communities to be able to share within it and feel that they are a part of, not a part from. And speaking to that, you know, another aspect of this situation with King Charles III is that, in my opinion, you know, one of the real positives of that is that the suggestion has been made that representatives from tribes and tribal nations throughout the so-called Commonwealth are invited to attend this event, this premiere in London. And so when you talk about healing, this is a big island, right? And so through colonialism, there has been a movement to silo people. So if you're north of the medicine line, you know, you're a First Nation, even down to the fact that there is now, due to the border, that separation, and there is an automatic divide between the tribes who are south of the medicine line. Well, you extend that out to all of the tribes throughout the so-called British Commonwealth, who are even geographically farther afield, but whom have been siloed too. And so, you know, what discussions have taken place between, you know, Indigenous folks in Australia and New Zealand about their experiences, and the residential schools, boarding schools, what direct conversations have occurred between these folks and people here? What conversations have happened with people on the continent of Africa? It's happened people in India, people in Pakistan, and so on and so on and so forth. You know, there are tribes in Europe, but we just, you know, happen to forget about that. But while ever you keep everybody separated and everybody siloed, then the power is entirely diffused. But when you bring people together and they're able to share their experiences, you know, that's where there's healing in that. There's healing in knowing that other people understand. Other people understand because they went through very similar things. And where are they today? And where do they want to go? Where do they want to take this? And so I think that is really important. You know, I'm a Roma person, and there's a bunch of Roma people in Canada. When my daughter goes to university here, they don't even know who the Roma are. You know, the Roma were part of a movement in the Indus Valley, which is now in Pakistan, thousands of years ago, which was one of the most advanced, quote-unquote, civilizations that there was. Certainly the most advanced at that time. You know, the Roma are made up of 6 main tribes. 6 main tribes. You got Roma people over there in Toronto, there's a Roma center. I'm sure there's a Roma organization here, and so on and so forth. This is an ancient tribal people. But one of these higher institutes of learning don't even know who the Roma are. You know, and the story as to how the Roma got to be here is a whole other question, which, you know, I could talk about for 3 hours, but I won't do that.
We can always do it out in the lobby too.
But, you know, my point with all of that is bringing people together. Bringing people together who've had common experiences, ancestrally, historically, and through colonialism. And I would hope that if this King Charles III event takes place, that will be one of the positives that comes from it.
Well, I absolutely agree. I feel like that's one of the reasons why we're all here in supporting films like this. And I think that the films do that. I think that's the power of film. One of the first times I ever learned about what happened to Maori people, you know, or what happened to Hawaiian people was through cinema. That was the way that I was educated on their experience. And so I think that the films are going to accomplish that. The art is moving us and leading us in a direction of unity with everybody, with all peoples all over the world. So I think we're getting close to wrapping the panel. And as part of the agenda today, I want to thank everybody who was able to stay. Obviously, everyone will be co-mingling around after this, and there's a further agenda to the evening as well. So I just want to thank you for allowing us to be here, and wonderful event that you put on. So I'm going to pass it back over to Janice.